Hello, welcome back to our channel. This is my green card story where we talk about everything EB2 and IW. And we are my green card story. We are excited to bring to you another video today. And it's an exciting one because it's going to discuss everything EB3 and not EB2 NIW that this channel is known for. And today we've brought a very, very, very important guest, someone that can tease out everything about EB3 because he went through all of the stages by himself till he got his permanent residence in the United States. Is going to tell us everything we need to know about applying, the process, the timeline of EB3. So, welcome everybody. Welcome our listeners. Thank you for always coming back to this channel. And I give to you Mr. Ajose. Mr. Ajose, you're welcome to my green card story.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thanks to be good to be back again.
All right. Thank you for honoring our invitation and for responding to us whenever we call. So, EB3. Even myself, the interviewer, I know nothing about this category. And
Okay.
we observed that a lot of videos about EB2 NIW, even recently O1 visa, H1B, and other alternatives, but nobody knows about EB3. So I think the good place for us to start is please introduce yourself. Tell us your line of profession, what made you eligible for, this EB3, where you're coming from, before this application.
Okay.
Over
Yeah.
to
My
you.
name is Ola Jose. Most people call me Ola. I'm originally from Nigeria.
Yep.
I work as a cybersecurity engineer. My specialization is data security. So everything around data loss prevention, data
Mhm.
classification, data encryption. Basically, they're the guys that make sure that sensitive data don't leave organizations and get into the wrong hands. So that's what I do for work.
Okay.
I had my first degree in Nigeria.
Mhm.
I actually went to a polytechnic,
Mhm.
Yaba College of Technology. Shout out to you guys.
Okay,
I
I don't
have to
know
shout
what
out
you
my
guys
school.
say. I don't know how you greet yourselves, but shout out to Yaba Tech people out there.
Yes. For me, my journey would have been a lot easier if I know what I know, if I knew what I know now, or
Yes,
if I knew someone that walked through that process, because
true.
there are a lot of myths that I realized were just myths.
Hmm.
For example, going for a master's degree with an HND certificate, but that's another story for another day. I seem to have a lot of stories,
Yeah.
but I came to the US with an HND degree because I didn't know about degree evaluation. I had to get an associate degree in computer science. My HND was in electrical engineering. I
Okay.
got a computer science, an associate degree in computer science, and then
Okay.
after that associate degree, I got my OPT,
Hmm.
which allowed me to work. Thankfully, I'd had about 4 to 5 years of work experience,
Okay.
specifically in the IT industry. I'd been in IT right out of secondary school. So I started out right out of secondary school assembling computers. Then I went into PABX systems, IP telephone technology, then went into networking.
Okay.
Then right after NYSC, I went into cybersecurity. So that was how I got into cybersecurity back in Nigeria. So I'd worked a little bit in Nigeria before moving to the US. When I got the associate degree, it was easier for me to get a job in cybersecurity.
Hmm.
And the crazy thing was that the job specifically, the experience I had was only a year. Um, doing that particular aspect of cybersecurity in
So a
Nigeria.
year
And
in Nigeria. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
doing that particular aspect of
Okay.
that
Cyber.
line of cybersecurity.
Hmm.
So it wasn't even something I highlighted in my resume because at that time I was more focused in going the network engineering path.
Yeah.
But thankfully, timing was just perfect because there was a shortage of cybersecurity engineers.
Mm,
They couldn't find enough engineers to hire.
mhm.
So they actually reached out to me first and they're like, yeah, we need someone with 3 years experience in data loss prevention. I'm like, I've only got
It's
1 year
one.
experience.
Yeah.
And then they went on, and when they couldn't find, they got back to me and they were like, okay, you know what? We'll invite you for the interview. If you do well in the interview, we'll offer you the job. And that's how I got into cybersecurity. So I
Okay.
didn't even set out to go into cybersecurity.
Okay. Okay. We're going to take a pause here. And
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
So, to me, your story sounds like the story of a perfect professional that we think EB2 NIW is all about.
Yes.
Because right now we work with a lot of people in cybersecurity. They want to use EB2 NIW, to
Mhm.
get their green card in the United States. So can you, I know you've mentioned it somewhere along the way, but maybe just for more emphasis, like, so why did you
Okay.
choose EB3 NIW? So why that one? Because I think your profile would have worked perfectly for someone who wanted to do EB2 and IW, because
Okay.
you didn't need an advanced degree. You had the HND,
Technically,
then you came here
yes.
and did the associate degree. Then
Yes.
cybersecurity, I would say, is of national interest. And you had
Correct.
those years of work experience in Nigeria coming in.
Yes.
So, but why EB3 and IW? Sorry, EB3,
Why
EB3,
not? Yeah.
EB3.
Why,
Why
why
not
EB2?
EB2 NIW?
Okay. So, one of the reasons, or my psychology, or my approach to applying for residency or anything with USCIS is
Mm-hmm.
you're better off getting overqualified
Ah,
than being underqualified.
oh yeah.
So, for example, if you qualify for two categories of permanent residency. So, for example, there's EB1. EB1 is extraordinary ability.
Okay.
The burden of proof is higher if you're applying for EB1. So, majority of the people that even apply for EB2 NIW qualify for EB1,
Mm,
but the burden of proof is higher for EB1. So, you're safer applying for
EB2.
EB2 and
Correct.
applying for EB1 because your
Correct.
chances of getting approved is higher.
Yeah.
Same thing in my case. The requirement for EB3 is so low that it would be a no-brainer for me to be approved. So it was, and like I said, a couple of other things really played in my favor
Okay.
that just made it logically easier for me to apply for EB1.
Yeah.
One of it is that I am married, and at the time my wife was pursuing a PhD program, so she was better qualified filing EB2 NIW.
Yeah.
And so having a variation of options, I
Ah,
going the employment-based route,
true.
she doing the self-petition route.
Okay.
We
Okay.
know if something goes wrong, the probability of things going wrong in the two application is slimmer
Yeah.
than one.
Yeah.
That's the first reason. The second reason is because I was on OPT. I already had a job
Mhm.
and my employer was open to sponsoring. Because the other question a lot of people ask me was, why didn't you start out with H1B? Because I went straight from F visa to EB3.
Okay. Okay. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Hmm. That's interesting. Yeah, because
Yes.
I don't know, I don't know if any employer would have preferred going that route
That
rather than
that's my
H1B.
point. And that's what I wanted to highlight because there's a huge difference between the qualifying criteria as defined by USCIS and the company policy.
Okay.
So the fact that a company decides that, you know what, would only sponsor if you're on H1B
Hmm.
doesn't mean that is the law.
Yes,
So we have to be able to distinguish that.
Mm-hmm.
And I took time out. I'm going to send you the link
Mm-hmm.
to really go through the requirements for EB3. So EB3 is employment based. That's where the EB comes
Comes
in.
from. Yeah.
Third preference is EB3, right? And I'll just quickly read a few things. You may be eligible for this immigrant visa preference category if you are a skilled worker, professional, or other worker.
Okay.
That's all it says. And under each category, I'm going to quickly read it out. If you're a skilled worker, the evidence they require just to show that you're a skilled worker, that's the burden of proof that they want from you. If you're a skilled worker, you only need to demonstrate that you possess at least 2 years of job experience, education, or not even and. So either you have 2 years of work experience, or you have education,
mm-hmm.
or you have training that meets the job requirements specified on the labor certification.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
you don't even need to have a bachelor's. That's what it means.
Yeah. Yeah.
As long as you meet the requirement, and we're going to talk about labor certification later when we talk about the process. The second requirement is relevant post-secondary education may be considered as training. So it means they prioritize training.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you don't have post-secondary education,
Yeah.
but you can show that you have trainings, you've done the certification,
Okay.
you meet the requirement.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for those that went to boot camp, got into software development,
Yes.
and don't have a formal education, actually qualify as skilled worker.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you must be performing work for which qualified workers are not available in the United States.
Yeah.
So you're talking about areas in the US where there's a shortage.
Yeah.
So AI engineers, for example, there's a huge shortage in America.
Yeah.
If you're self-taught and you've done projects, or you have 2 years experience, or you've done multiple trainings, you've done certifications, you qualify.
Yeah.
So you can see that in this case, the burden of proof is way lower than EB2 and IW. The second requirement category is professionals. They define professionals by you must demonstrate that you possess a US bachelor's or a foreign equivalent degree. Note, foreign equivalent degree is the requirement. Then you must be performing work for qualified. So it means you must be working with a company and in a role that there's shortage and you can't find Americans or residents. And then you must meet the other requirements specified by the labor certification. That's it.
That's it. That's it.
And then unskilled, that's where it gets interesting. You must demonstrate the ability to perform unskilled labor.
Wow.
Requiring less than 2 years training or experience that is not of a temporary or seasonal nature.
Okay.
So those people that have gone into agriculture in Nigeria, that have owned a farm for 2 years or even less. And we know that some areas in America that are big on farming, they have shortage of farm workers.
Yes.
If you're able to get a job, note it cannot be temporal or seasonal, but if you're able to get a permanent job, you can convince them to sponsor. And here's the other thing I wanted to talk about, because sometimes you need to educate yourself because you are the one that wants the benefit. Like in my case, my employer didn't offer me EB3
option. Exactly. This
yes,
is a very,
I was
very
on
good
OPT.
One. Exactly.
I was on OPT, and because I only had an associate degree, even if you're in STEM, you only get 1 year of OPT at associate degree level. So I only had 1 year. We tried H1B, and I didn't even go through the lottery. And then I did, sometimes we have to do analysis. I did the analysis. There are over 1 million people filing for H1B. There are only about 65,000 slots every year. 10,000 out of that 65,000 slots already goes to US partners. US countries that they have, so El Salvador and
Yeah.
all these other countries. Now, it means you're left with 55,000.
Mm,
35,000 out of that 55,000 goes to applicants that have a graduate degree. At the time, I didn't even have a graduate degree
yeah.
in the US. So it means I'm left with 20,000 slots. So I'm like, what is the probability? And it was those data that helps me make a case to my employer.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I had to figure out is this. Is my priority date current? And as Nigerians, as most Africans, most countries, their priority date are not are current. They don't have the kind of backlog China or
Yeah.
India has.
Yeah.
So it means that they don't have to wait for their priority date to be current,
Yes. Okay.
right? So I just went to my employer the second time we wanted to try. And I was like, hey, instead of trying H1B,
Mm.
why not let's try
Yes.
Green Card Direct? My priority date is current. H1B is valid for only 3 years, after which you have to file for renewal. That's
Again.
additional
Yeah.
cost. This one, you only file it once. My chances of getting approved is high.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I'd evaluated my HND
Mm-hmm.
and it's been confirmed to be equivalent to
To
bachelor's. I
USCIS.
did course by course evaluation, so all my courses, they got the transcript, they transcribed it to US equivalent,
Yeah.
so they could see the courses, the grade, the equivalent grade and all. So I was like, my priority date is current, I can figure out a way to maintain my status, and we're going to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you would say that I have only 1 year of OPT.
OPT.
How was I able to maintain status to be able to continue working
Mm-hmm.
till my
Before
work
the
authorization came out?
yeah.
Because before your work authorization comes out, you have to go through the labor certification and have an approved I-140 before they issue the work authorization. And that takes time.
Yeah.
And you cannot file for premium processing for I-140 if you're doing EB3.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yes. So it means you have to wait that long. And it means that you have to figure out a
Even
way.
now?
I think so.
Uh-oh.
Don't quote me on that. So it means you have to figure out a way to maintain some sort of work authorization. That's where the one CPT comes
Okay.
in. And we've done a previous interview on that.
Yeah.
So I was able to do the one CPT,
Mm-hmm.
maintain my job, use the CPT to continue working
Okay.
till
Mm-hmm.
I got my I-765 approved. And once that is approved, then F1 visa can go out the window.
Yeah.
But there's a risk to that because then if you get denied, then you have to apply for reinstatement because you no longer have valid F1
Understand.
status.
Yeah.
So there's a risk, but the risk for me was minimal.
Okay.
So that's the requirement. So you can be an unskilled worker
Mm-hmm.
and still qualify for EB3. So the burden of proof is just so low that it's a no-brainer. My chances of getting approved is much higher. And since I already had a job, I spoke to my employer. They were not aware. They didn't know. They were like, "Oh, really? Let's talk to our lawyers." And then they go talk to their lawyer. The lawyer was like, "Sure, he qualifies to do it." And that was when we started the process.
Okay.
At the beginning of the process, I actually got a job that offered me double my salary, but it became part of my negotiation because I was like, "Okay, will you guys initiate my green card application immediately?"
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, no, you have to be on H1B.
Uh-oh.
So because of that, I declined the offer. That's to say that it is a company policy thing. It's not a law. What I read to you is what the law
Oh,
states. And
says
this is
yes,
reading
yes.
directly from uscis.gov. I'm going
Yeah.
to provide that
Yeah,
link
the link will
in the
be
show note.
yes.
So once you meet this prerequisite, and it's important you know this because as you go get your OPT, as you look for a job,
Mm-hmm.
you can include these conversations as part of your negotiation.
Yeah.
So you don't have to even prioritize money. You can make this a sort of way to make concession because assuming that you already have the experience, you already have something to offer, they
Yeah.
really want you, they don't want to pay you what you want,
Mm-hmm.
then tell them, okay, I understand your budget is this way, but can you do this? And the other thing is this, because the process takes time, there's an incentive for them to keep you
To keep you
because
on
they are
the job.
sponsoring you.
Yes.
So you have to be able to sell what they stand to gain, but also don't expect them to offer you. Because think about it, the worst that will happen is they'll say no.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you know that, okay, I can be on the lookout for a job that will tell me yes.
Yes.
And if they tell me yes, you have a valid reason to leave. They can't be mad
No.
because you give them right of first refusal.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah,
Yes.
sounds good. And I just wanted our listeners to, because this is like a class rather than an interview for me. So I'm also learning a lot of things. If you do not come to your employer with all of these points, that
Hmm.
Mr. Jose has nicely outlined, you might get this refusal. You might get this, oh, everybody just applies for H1B. And I think also there's this factor of we've not done this for anyone before. So you
Right.
have to lead, the process. Yes, along with the company's lawyer and all those people, but you have to know all this information. Come with your arsenal of information and be
Exactly.
educating them, be guiding them on all of the possibilities available. So that was a very good point for me
And
to
more importantly, you have to be valuable enough for them
see
to go
reasons.
out of policy,
Hmm.
to want to go out of their way to want to keep you.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So I think is a good segue into the entire process because you've educated us about the requirement, what EB3 is, and you were mentioning a lot of things about the process and so I think it's a good time to just start on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first thing is you want to have all your documentation
Okay.
handy. So I'll always say the first phase is have all your documents ready. And either ways, you should always have all your documents ready.
Ready. Yeah.
So because if they're saying they require 2 years of work experience, if you're applying as a professional, you want to show, so you want to have your certificate. If you have an international degree, you want to have the evaluation ready. You don't want to put yourself in a situation where they have to be the one waiting for you. So first of all, you want to have everything handy. Look up the requirement, look up the documents that are needed, do some research. If you're coming off as, because the first step is labor certification. The labor certification process is divided into two,
Mm.
right? So the first step is the I think they call it the prevailing wage.
Okay.
So remember we've talked about an in-demand job or
Yes.
a role where there's
Shortage
shortage
of
in the country where they
resources.
can't find.
Hmm.
The employer has to show two things. The first is that you qualify for that role and that you meet the requirement for that role. And then the second is that they're willing or they are already paying you if you're working with them
Hmm.
the prevailing wage for that role.
Okay.
And and that they can afford to pay that prevailing wage. And that's where it's a little bit harder for smaller companies because if a startup is saying we want to hire an AI engineer and their market cap or their revenue is only X amount, 100,000, and the prevailing wage for an AI engineer is 200,000, obviously that will not work. So they also have to meet a certain threshold. And so you have to think about that when you're applying. And especially for people in IT, you can you can leverage different aspects of IT. So for example, in my case, I could pass as a network engineer, I could pass as a cybersecurity engineer, I could pass as a cloud engineer. So
Ah,
you want to look at
so
because of it,
multi.
they're all intertwined really. So you want to position yourself as a professional in an aspect that is not saturated. So for example, cloud engineers might be flooded, there might be like a lot of cloud engineers out there.
Okay.
So the burden of proof to show that there's actually shortage, because the employer has to prove that they can't find a citizen or a resident as a reason why they're petitioning or
Who
sponsoring you.
has your skill set? Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So if you are positioning yourself in a space where it's already flooded, then it becomes difficult.
Okay.
Like if you say I'm a marketer, there are so many marketers in America.
Yes.
So, and that's why AI is hard. At the time I applied, they couldn't find cybersecurity engineers
Yeah.
anywhere, so it
When
was
you
hard.
applied,
It was
yes,
easy.
they couldn't.
So you have to do your own work and position yourself as that. So for the prevailing way, for um, the proof that you qualify for those jobs. So they have to specify what the job requires. So if it requires a bachelor's degree, you have to show that you have a bachelor's degree.
Okay.
If it requires, and if you go to Department of Labor, so labor certification is done by the Department of Labor. So all your documentation is with the Department of Labor, not US Immigration, and that's important. So I'm going to also provide the link
Okay.
to the requirement and just the link that talks about labor certification, what you need to know, and all of that. There are frequently asked questions and all of that. So, and they most roles are categorized under NOC code, NOC code. That's like the category of that job title
Okay.
that you
I'm
have.
familiar with
So
SOC. So there's
yes,
knock. Okay.
yes.
Okay.
So that's kind of like, so for example, my original job used a software developer code.
Yes.
By the time I was at the tail end of my application, my new employer, and I'm going to talk about your ability to switch employers. It's possible. You can still switch employers. Um, by as sort of the time I was invited for an interview, I'd already switched role.
Mm.
My new employer categorized me as a cybersecurity analyst,
Yeah. A different code.
which is a different code.
Yes.
But the thing is, as long as they are related, is always not an issue.
Okay.
So cybersecurity, software development is still somewhat related. My job description, because when you're filing the labor certification, they're going to show proof. The employer has to show proof that they tried advertising that role. They have to publish that role in newspaper. They have to put it out there.
Yeah.
They have to show that they didn't find qualified employer.
True.
So the job description must match your experience, and all of that must just align. So as long as they see that, so for example, even though they categorize it as software development, the job description was literally exactly the same as what my new employer submitted and categorized as cybersecurity analyst. So it wasn't an issue. It would be an issue if I went from software development to sales or to even data analytics. They are a little bit, so you don't want to. So even though you can switch employers, and I can tell you, there are certain requirements you have to meet before you switch employers.
Okay.
So you don't think that you just get your employer to file, and then once they file, you're off. No, there's a requirement. There's a way to do it properly in such a way that you're protected and your employer cannot retaliate if you decide to leave.
Leave. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So
So those are the
that's the
two
first
steps.
step.
Oh, that's the first step.
The
Okay.
prevailing wage is each category has a prevailing wage decided by the Department of Labor. So the employer cannot just say the prevailing wage for a software developer is 50,000. The Department of Labor says the prevailing wage is 75,000. Then they have to show that they've been paying you at least 75,000. So you have to also show your pay stub, your W-2, your tax returns, and all those things. So you knowing all that and you already having those documents ready, it's easy for you to say, when they say, yes, we are ready to go, you're like,
Okay.
these are the documents you need. They're like, oh, this guy is ready. You know, and lawyers also like those kind of people. So
Yes.
it makes the process go a little bit smoother. They know that you're serious, you're ready, you know, it's encouraging. But if they say we need this and it's taking you 3 months and you're dilly-dallying, you know, it might make them change their mind. So the first step, labor certification, it took about 8 months to get that approved.
Okay.
At the point, it started taking about a year because I applied actually during COVID. So my own timeline will be much longer than a lot of people because we got caught in the whole
Yes.
shutdown trap, and then our file got missing in quotes, and that was why it took like forever to get
Oh,
approved. But
okay.
there were a ton of people that applied for EB3 that didn't have to wait that long.
Okay.
So,
So let me ask some questions at this point for our
okay.
listeners or someone that is not exactly familiar with this whole thing.
Mhm.
My question is, my understanding is that if you're not in the United States, you could apply for EP3 if you have an employer.
Yes. If
Okay.
you have an employer that is willing to sponsor, yes.
Okay. All right.
So let me speak to that. So oftentimes EB3 is filed by those that are already in the US because they already have the job
Yeah, because when you were
and
talking,
they're
you were
already
like, oh,
paid.
they need to show that their W-2, even the money
Yes.
they pay in
So
Nigeria, no matter how you convert it, for example, it's not going to
yes.
meet the
So if
prevailing
an
wage.
employer that you don't work with is willing to sponsor,
Okay.
then they have to show that they are committing to paying you
Okay.
that amount
Okay. Okay. Okay.
and that they have the ability to pay that
All
amount.
right. All right.
So it's a little bit more difficult because then they have to commit and then it has to take about a year, sometimes plus. And so because you don't already have the job, you've not been working with them, there's a risk that fatigue might set in and they're like, we're tired, we're not doing it again.
Mm,
So that's why I'd rather encourage people to come into the system because generally it's just faster, it's just a little bit smoother
true.
if you're already within the system when you're doing all this paperwork
True.
compared to when you're doing it from outside.
Hmm.
So if it means applying for masters, coming in and then wait for OPT, get your OPT, you know, it's even easier because your chances of getting a job is higher. You have
Yeah.
more options to pull from.
Hmm.
You have more pull to talk about what you want and more likely you understand what I mean. So
Exactly.
yes,
Exactly. Okay. I just wanted
but
to
it's not
clarify that.
impossible if you're,
Hmm.
it's not impossible if you're outside of the country.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we got through
Labor
the
certification.
labor certification process, and you said that took you 8 months,
Yes,
and that's not even the I-140 yet.
yes.
Okay.
And there's
Okay. Let's
no premium
continue.
processing for labor certification.
Okay. Sad,
For
but let's
even for
continue.
EB2,
Mm-hmm.
even for EB2 employment based,
Based
I know there are talks of starting premium processing
processing.
just to make some money, but I don't know where they are
Where they
with
are
that
on
process.
those. Okay. Okay.
So once your labor certification is approved, the next step is applying for your I-140. Now, this is a process that a lot of our listeners might be familiar with from the NIW. So it's pretty much the same process, but you're just providing documentation that meets the requirements. So like I said, we talked about the basic requirement for EB3. So if you're applying as a professional, then you have to show that you have a bachelor's degree. You have to show that you have all those experience. And sometimes that includes reference letters from your employer. So I got reference letters from my employers in Nigeria and they included the salary in Naira.
Okay.
That doesn't matter. They don't really care because your current job is paying you the prevalent
Exactly.
wage. So they are fine.
Yeah.
But they were able to say, yeah, this guy worked with us between this day and this day, blah, 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 in
Mm-hmm.
their letterhead. We're able to include that in the application. your old ID cards that you had when you were going to work, those things. If you have your pay, I don't know, pay slip, I think that's what they call it in
Yes.
Nigeria.
Yes.
Or if you have your retirement statement, something to show that you actually worked
Work
with
with
those
them.
companies, if they're not local,
Okay.
goes a long way. It's also helpful if they're multinational, but you worked in the local arm.
Yeah.
So, for example, for those that worked with Nestle,
Mm-hmm.
Procter and Gamble,
Yeah.
Mobil,
Yeah.
Shell, or HP, Dell, you know, it helps because at least they can put a face to the company.
Yeah.
But it's not a deal breaker.
If they
As
are
long as the company
local
has
companies.
yeah, if it's a local company that has good online presence, obviously
Mm.
they can look them up and all that. You also want to be sure that whoever you are using and is signing that letter is using a job title. That if they go to LinkedIn, not that you tell your colleague to write recommendation letter or letter to show that he works there, and he puts you, and then they look up the name on LinkedIn, and it's like
Yeah.
engineer or whatever.
Yeah.
So you it's important that whatever you're doing has to be truthful. You don't want to ever put yourself in a situation where you're lying, because trust me, it's easy to catch you in this information age. So you want to be truthful, but it doesn't matter if it's a local company or not.
Okay.
So you get all those recommendation letter. Just get all any documentation that can support your claim that you're a professional, that you meet with the qualification and all of that. In my case, I think I-140 took about, no, actually I take that back. Labor certification took about 5 months. I-140 took about 8 months.
Okay.
At a time, labor certification went as far as taking about 1 year. So I don't know where it is now after COVID, but be prepared for it to be as long as possible. And that's why it's better if you ask time OPT to start that process maybe within your first year. You know that if it's extending, you can always apply for OPT extension and continue the process. And after 2 years, if you don't have your work authorization, you can do the one CPT. At least you've worked long enough to be able to save some money to pay for
For that.
the one CPT.
Yeah.
But that's the main thing with I-140 is what it is. We all know the process.
Okay.
Um, yes.
Yeah, so we all know the process, but I'm just going to let you weigh in some of what I
Okay.
think might be the differences. So
Okay.
now it's your employer that is in charge. You just happen to be
Yes.
someone that was so involved and you know all the
Yes.
steps. For others like NIW applicants, they also are doing by themselves or using lawyers or whatever. And you're
Mm.
telling me that you had to put all those supporting documents as well.
Yes.
So my
Either
question,
ways, even if the lawyer is doing it, you still have to provide the
yes,
documents.
my question will be, do you think if you didn't have all those supporting documents, like you said, the recommendation letter from reputable companies, they could actually go back and test your eligibility for real. Do
Yes.
you think the just your company applying for you and saying the things you're going to be doing for them and saying you've passed the labor certification process will suffice? I mean, for the I-140 part now.
As long as, so the key thing is check all the points that is on the website. So if they said this is the eligibility requirement, make sure you meet the eligibility requirement.
Yeah.
Worst case, they
So,
will send you an RFE. Like in my case,
okay.
I actually got an RFE,
That's
and that's
my
an interesting
question,
story.
actually. So we are used to, like, if you don't provide all those things, you're getting an RFE and you're getting an RFE. But I just wanted
Yes.
to understand from your
In some cases, there might
perspective.
be outright denial, or if they are nice, they might send you a notice of intent to deny. But
Hey,
those are cases where,
you,
so they might send an outright denial if they find out that you lied or something, or you, provided a false document, so it
Okay.
can be an
Okay.
outright denial.
Okay. Okay.
If they are not convinced and they feel like you are more likely to be not qualified than qualified,
Mm-hmm.
they might send you what they call an NOID,
Okay.
notice of intent to deny. So
Mm.
that means they are writing you to let you know, we see your application, but you want to deny it. But they are giving you one last chance to quickly send additional documents.
Okay, that's similar. That's
So
similar
in
to
the
yeah.
notice of intent to deny, they will actually list why they are considering denying you.
Okay.
So if you have supporting document to address that, you can quickly send it to them. And that's why you have to be ready. Because if they now need a document that will take 10 years, you don't have 10 years, or you
You
don't even have three
probably have
months.
just 60 days or something.
Exactly. So and then they might just send you RFE. Like in my case, they sent me an RFE.
Okay.
And the reason for the RFE was because, like I said, I have an HND. So what I used to apply was my
Associate.
West evaluation
Okay.
transcript.
Okay. Okay.
So I didn't even use my Yabatek transcript.
Itself. Mm.
So I had West send them the transcript directly. So it's like transcript, official transcript,
Mm.
because I wasn't the one sending it to them.
Yeah. Okay.
And apparently, somewhere in the USCIS requirements, they require that the evaluation company includes the resume of the individual that evaluated the transcript. And West did not include that. So that
What?
was a battle for me. Yes.
Really?
Because they sent the RFE asking me to send the resume. I contacted West and they're like, we can't give you the resume because it's our employee's
Exactly.
personal information.
Okay. This is
So
my
it
first time of hearing
So
that.
it was a battle, but one of the lessons I learned from this experience is just because someone tell you this is what it is, doesn't mean that is what it is. You have to, especially when USCIS is telling me this is their regulation. If
Mm.
USCIS is saying this is their regulation and they accept evaluated transcripts, it means that it's a norm that the evaluation company should be
Shoot.
providing that.
Yeah.
But the evaluation company is saying we don't do that. So you can say, throw your hands up in the air and say they don't do that and give up. Or you can say, when they told me that, I told them, okay, it's fine. You don't have to send it to me. Send it to USCIS. I don't care. I'm not interested. And it, it was a lot of back and forth until I did some digging. I found out that there is a body, an association of evaluation companies. And I went to their bylaws. And the bylaw clearly states that if the applicant requests for it, they should provide it.
Okay.
Up until then, I never heard from anywhere
Mm-hmm.
that there's something called Association of Evaluation Companies or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But sometimes it's just sitting on the internet and browsing and searching and researching to just don't take no for an answer.
Uh-oh.
So when I found out in the bylaw, I was like, yes. Because at this point, the lawyers had already asked us because they don't
This
have,
is the
go and
real
figure
on
it
your
out.
own.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you are the one that knows that is we die here. You know what I mean? So I had to do what I had to do. So I screenshot that page from their bylaw, looked for a contact us email,
Hmm.
and sent the evaluation company, evaluation association an email saying this statement has a bylaw that
Um,
all your members must comply to.
okay.
Is this a mandate or
Hmm.
is this a recommendation? So I wasn't reporting. I was just, let's know how far. So if you come back and say it's a mandate, I can now take that hard evidence and go to West. You are a member of this association. So are you telling me that by refusing me, you are breaking something you agreed to?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
So up until then, the evaluation committee didn't even allow me to talk to a real person. So you have to call, wait on the queue
That's
for
true.
hours and end to talk to somebody, and then you get to talk to different people and have to repeat the entire story of your life every single time.
Yes, I know how that can
Right.
feel.
So I sent them that email, and because it's one of the most popular evaluation companies, they are powerful in that association. So someone replied to me directly and asked me what the issue was.
Okay.
So I tell them the issue and send all the supporting evidence. Because up until then, they refused to send me any document. They refused to. Because I was like, okay, if you don't provide the information and you're not willing to send the information,
CV,
can you write USCIS directly saying this person sent a request, but we
but we
don't.
don't do
You will
this.
sort it out between
Between you
yourself.
guys, yeah.
But they weren't even willing to do that. So I didn't have any form of documentation to
Take
provide
back
to
to
USCIS
USCIS.
that this is the situation.
Yeah,
So once I did that, it got escalated
yeah.
to the board of whatever in the
Mm-hmm.
association,
True.
and then that got to the evaluation company, and someone in the evaluation company reached out to me directly. The same person the same company that I've been trying to reach a human
Mm.
for at this point more than a month, because you have 60 days to respond to,
Yes,
to
yes.
RFE.
Mm-hmm.
So someone now reached out to me from the same company.
Okay.
Eventually, so they were like, okay, send an envelope with tracking number addressed to USCIS. We'll put it in there and then we can mail it. And I was like, okay, I'll have someone reach out to you. 2 days later, I did not hear from the person. I emailed the contact again. I did not hear from you people. What's going on?
Whoa,
They eventually sent me the resume by email.
whoa. Ha. That was a journey, in fact.
So it was a journey, and it was something that it's easy for you to throw your hands up that
Definitely.
I've done my best. But in this matter, you are the one that would enjoy the benefit. So you are the one that will say, I'm not taking no for an answer. And sometimes that's the difference between an approval and a denial.
Yeah, yeah.
Because once I got that letter and I sent it to USS, in fact, in less than a week, once the letter got there, they approved the I-140.
Okay, okay.
And then my employer and the lawyers were like, wow, I did not believe that you could get the letter. I'm like, well, if you are
Oh
desperate,
God, yes, yes,
you know,
yes. Oh my
so,
goodness, you did a lot of work. Ah,
right. But
ah,
the
yeah.
lesson is don't take no for an answer.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You
Yeah.
did a lot of work. So the I-140 was approved eventually, and you said that took
Yes.
like 8 months, including
Yes.
responding to the RFE. Oh,
Yes.
okay, okay.
So, the other thing is, just like NIW, you can file your I-140, your 765, your 485, and your medicals. You can file it at once.
Yes.
But obviously, they'll first process the I-140. So once they process that, I think I just waited a couple of months.
Okay.
I don't remember how long, but at that time I was already on the one CPT. So I was getting exhausted because I was in Boston. My school was in Arizona. I was taking 5-hour flight every 2 months. Uh, it was tough. So at that point, I was just waiting. Let me just get this I-75 approval so that I can take a break from school.
Okay.
But thankfully, I was able to get my MBA through the Day One CPT. So my MBA is actually from Day One CPT. Oh, yes, well, a lot of people do Day One CPT just to maintain their status.
Okay. So when
It's
your
actually
OPT
a
was already
realistic,
over, it already took
yeah,
us more than 1 year, right? The 5 months, the
yeah.
eight
The
months.
MBA
So,
was 2 years. I finished my MBA. I actually went for my graduation and I was going for a dual major because my MBA was in information technology. I was trying to get an additional one in cybersecurity because they started something in cybersecurity. So even though it's something you have to do because you want to maintain your status, you can
okay.
still take that advantage to further your education.
Yes. Yes.
So I got my MBA in information technology
Hmm.
that way.
Three in
And
one.
that's the only graduate degree I have today. So it's
Interesting.
not a waste. And as far as I know, my only reason for doing it is not because I wanted to retain my status, because I still got what I needed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So once my I-765, which is my work authorization based on a pending 485 approval, was approved, I no longer needed to retain a valid F1. It was advisable, but I was done at that time. I was exhausted, I was tired, I didn't want to move on.
I
So I
know.
took a break and I just continued using, you just provide new documentation to your employer. Now I have a work authorization based on this. You provide the documentation and they're fine. You don't have to stop work. You don't have to go through any hassle.
Okay.
And as long as your I-485 is pending, they will keep renewing your work authorization. So I
Yes.
actually had to renew. The first one was a 2 year because it was during COVID, so they had extended the work authorization from 1 year to 2 years.
Okay.
Note that before COVID, the timeline for 485 was actually 6 months.
Yeah.
So if you had a STEM OPT, before you finish your STEM OPT, you could have gotten your green card.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. But then I got the 2 year work authorization. 2 years ran out. I was still waiting for my I-485. There was no RFE, there was nothing. It was just lost in some dark hole. And that's an exception to
And
the case.
it was concurrent filing. So I
Um,
mean,
how,
you did both the I-140 and
yes,
I-485 the same,
everything. Yeah.
everything.
Yeah,
Wow,
so I
that's a
already got
lot
my
of
priority
information
date.
being thrown
Yeah.
somewhere, I think.
Yes. So I already got all of that pending. So let me go back to how you can change jobs in this process, because that's important.
Yeah,
Because
that's very
the
important.
concern some people might have is, what if my employer is maltreating me because they sponsored me? Can I
Yeah.
leave? The law states, and I don't have that link ready, but I can provide that link.
Okay, so we are
There's a
providing us three
USCIS.
links now. We are going to put under this caption for this video.
Okay,
The third one now is
yes.
link on
So,
changing employers.
yes, so it is called job portability policy.
Interesting. I got it. Job
So I
portability
can
policy.
quickly look it up. Yes.
Okay.
So job portability after adjustments filing and other AC 21 provisions. So I'll
Okay, so
also
it's
provide that link
after
from
adjustment
USS.
filing.
Yes.
Okay.
So here's the spiel. For you to be able to change jobs after you file, obviously it's advisable you file everything at once, because then once you file your 485, you have your priority date set. So the earlier you file it, the better, because your priority date determines your spot on the queue, right? So if two people are applying and one files everything I-140, 765, 485 together, they will take that application into the system and put your place on the line immediately, even though they won't process it. But your spot on the line is secure. If the other person files I-140 first, wait to get the I-140 approved, and then file the 485, the person's spot on the queue will be after he files the 485.
Well, I
Do you follow?
understand that.
So now here's the spiel. If your 485 application has been pending for more than 6 months, under the job portability provisions, you can change employers on the condition that the new job is similar, because you cannot violate the labor certification approval you have,
Yeah,
because the
you already
certification
have.
is tied to the job code and the
Yes,
specific job you're doing.
correct.
So if you change employers and change to a totally different job,
Hmm.
you have to go file labor certification again.
Yeah,
So you don't want to do that.
yeah.
And don't forget, your I-140 is based on your labor certification. So you have to redo everything. but you can change jobs for exactly the same role to any other employer. And the only thing you have to do is send a job portability form. It's called I-145J supplement. So it's a supplementary document
I
saying
145J.
145J supplement. So you're just saying, hey, as an update to my pending application, I have changed jobs to this employer. And then the employer will fill the form. Obviously, they also have to meet the requirement to sponsor.
Yeah.
But then they'll fill the form, you provide the offer letter, the pay stub to show that the salary and everything, if not the same, is higher. Obviously, they don't have a problem if it's higher. And you just send them that documentation and you're good.
Yes.
So you can actually change jobs three, four, there's no limit. So if you get another job, you just have to send in that documentation.
But
And
like you
sometimes you
said,
can,
during the
wait,
change of status process, and you must
adjustment
be
of
on
status.
it for like six
It
months
must have been
already.
pending for at least 6 months
Okay.
before you can do
Yeah,
that.
I get the
But
clause.
obviously, when you're trying to convince your employer, you don't want to talk about that. Well, you can talk about, okay, it's going to take almost a year for labor certification to be out. It's going to take almost a year for I-140.
Mhm.
And even if premium is out, you are telling them that they already have you locked down for 2 years. That's a good proposition,
Yeah,
because it's expensive to hire new people.
as
So,
well. Okay, okay. So much tea to be spilled. And thank you so much. I really don't know how to thank you. We are going almost an hour on
wow,
this
time flies.
interview, and it's like time just flew by so fast. So the
Yes.
last couple of questions will be for you to tell us. I know in your own case a lot of things happened, but just give us like what was it like in 2024 or 2023, if you know, to go through this process or to apply through EB3, to
Okay.
get your
Yeah.
permanent residence in the United States. So just if you know anything that is out there about EB3 that our listeners would like to know about, just share with us.
Okay. So I'll just say generally, the first thing is for every person trying to immigrate into the US or even to any country, you have to be on top of the news. You have to know what the government is talking about immigration. You have to know what their policies are,
Mhm.
because that's the only way you can take advantage of it. You also have to know resources that are available to support immigrants.
Yeah.
So, for example, in my case, I was able to open a case with Ombudsman.
Yes,
That's
ombudsman.
the ombudsman.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the advocate arm of DHS.
Yes.
So because some people have issues where they ship their card, it gets lost. Sometimes they pick up cases where um, your application has been pending beyond the processing time. And that's the other thing. You also have to know how to track your application. You have to know when it's going too long,
Mhm.
because you can track the processing time for every application category.
Yes.
So if your application is outside of the processing time, you have to know what to do. So open a case with ombudsman, call USCIS,
Mhm.
even reach out to your local rep. And
Yes.
yes, I
Yes.
know we are shy from doing that, and sometimes they are overwhelmed with requests. And that's why you have to engage in the community. Like in my case, I went to a local church
Mhm.
that the pastor knew the House of Rep member
Okay.
personally.
Okay.
So he was able to, help me out in that case. You know, and that's the crazy thing. I'd opened a case on the House of Reps website previously without any response. But now that someone he
Yeah,
knew
church.
was
Church
reaching out,
wise.
they were able to reach out. So their office even reached out to me to let me know, hey, this person reached out. what's the situation. This was the same office that reached out and called. If you can go into the office,
Uh-huh.
you can go there in person. Sometimes in-person interaction carries more weight.
True.
Just don't, once your case is outside processing time, just don't sit down, open and pray. Yes, you have to, pray and hope and do all
Mm-hmm.
of that and be positive, but you also have to know, explore your options.
Okay.
And in my case, there was a valid case to file a mandamus lawsuit,
Mm.
but I decided against it because at the time the House of Rep member was already involved,
Yeah.
and I knew that I wasn't going to get my money back because it cost money to file a mandamus lawsuit. So I
I
was
see.
like, yeah, I'm just going to make that a last resort. So you have options. The fact that you're an immigrant doesn't mean you don't have rights. It is your responsibility to find those rights and use them. And in most cases, um, what's it called? Retaliation is illegal in most cases. So USCIS cannot punish you. I actually did write USCIS threatening to sue them. And
Okay.
in some cases, that has worked. I've heard stories where the person was like, hey, my application has been pending for longer than expected. This is the priority date. This is the processing time. Mine has been pending for this long. I provided different documentation and said, if you don't process my application in 30 days, I'm going to file a lawsuit.
Okay.
And they approved.
Yeah.
So don't hold back if you feel there's a legal channel for you to explore.
Yeah.
And sometimes it might be, filing. The other thing I did was I requested for my documents with USCIS using the Freedom of Information Act. And a lot of these things, you can do them yourself. You don't need a lawyer. If you talk to a lawyer, they'll tell you bring 1,000, bring 2,000, we'll do it for you. It's something you can just go to online, open an account, fill the form, and they'll provide the information. So
Yeah.
use the internet. There's so much resource there.
Okay.
Don't just rely on what people tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what the official channel says and hold them true to that. If they say 2 years, they cannot deny you if you only have 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Though, just like NIW,
Yeah.
there's nowhere in NIW that they say you must have publications. We know, yes, it helps,
Yeah.
but you have to know what the law says. Just don't rely on what people say.
Okay.
And moving forward in terms of the immigration landscape, there seemed to be a push and a more focused attention towards legal immigration now, just because of the noise that the illegal immigration thing has caused. So whether the Democrats win or the Republican win, there's likely to be a push towards legal immigration just to
Yes.
appease
Mm-hmm. The
people that are
parties.
upset.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be a perfect time to start paying attention to what they're saying, what policies are they planning to come in,
Okay.
to implement,
Okay.
which of those policies is likely to pass. So for example, the other time Trump was saying that, yes, if you have a degree, we'll just give you permanent residence. Is that possible? Maybe. Is it realistic? Maybe not. But there's but it doesn't mean there might not be a policy that will still be favorable. So stay on top of these things and act fast, because the earlier you act before it becomes saturated, the faster and the more likely it is for you to be approved. So yeah, just don't sit down and just twiddle your thumb.
Yeah.
Do a lot of work. Go online, research, ask for questions. Don't be quiet. Talk to people, join forums. On Facebook, there's an entire USCIS, there's an entire community of people that
Yes.
have pending cases with
True.
USCIS.
True.
And sometimes they go there to vent, sometimes they go there to ask questions. You
Advice.
can learn a lot from them.
Yeah.
You have a community that understands what you are going through
Mm-hmm.
and are able to really relate to you with empathy. Because especially for those of us that are in a place where there are not a lot of Africans, there are not a lot of immigrants, they can't relate to the things you say. So sometimes they might not be the perfect support structure for you. So you want to be sure that you're in an environment or you're in a community where they can effectively support you in this journey.
Yeah.
It's not a lonely journey.
No,
Don't make it one.
no. Okay. Thank you so much again. I mean, yeah, applying for any employment-based visa this time around is is hell. Yeah, and I like how you just put it all together. And I guess it would be a good place for us to stop. Again, I really want to thank you for everything you've shared, your journey, details, and requirements for EB3. And thank you for always making time to talk to us at My Green Card Story. So, for our
You're welcome.
listeners, I'm thinking this might be a part two of our video on EB3, and I'm sure you've learned a lot of good things about EB3. If you have any questions going through this process or trying to, engage your employer to explore this option, please drop your questions below or reach out to us. Our website is www.mygreencardstory.com, and all of our social media handles as well go by My Green Card Story. So you can look out for us that way and ask your questions on these platforms. So again, thank you so much, Mr. Jose, and next time,
Thank you
bye.
for having me. And if there's any questions that you feel you want to reach out, please feel free to reach out and I
Yes,
can comment or provide a
yes.
response to you guys.
Yes, you're the
So thank you for
professor.
having me.
You're the EB3 professor, and maybe the
Oh,
one CPT professor right now. So yes, any questions we get, we're going to channel them to you.
please, yeah. And one last thing,
Yeah,
this is my experience. It
true.
doesn't mean this is the only way. So
Mm,
please don't restrict yourself to everything I said, but the key takeaway is go to the official channel and do your research. Just don't take everything people tell you. Look
all
like and
right.
think out. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.